Call the meeting to order. It is a little bit after 3, March 22nd, 2023, for the City of Lake Helen Commission Workshop. We only have a couple of things to talk about today. The first one being the Orange Cane Point project. Mr. Hurley is here, as well as some gentlemen with him. And I guess without further ado, I'll just turn the floor over to you.
Well, thank you. First, thanks to everybody for coming today, because they take the time to hear me. I do appreciate it. I'll try and be as brief as possible, so I'd like to imitate Felicia County. That's right. We should be out here in minutes, not hours.
You forget that we're here too, so it won't take minutes.
Okay.
At least takes several minutes.
Well, my intention today, I brought Lawson Dan, who is a commercial real estate guru in Florida and across the country, and also Nathan Eisler, who they worked together. Lawson is independent now, but Nathan is still with Addison Young. They've been marketing my property for 5 years now, and actually longer than that, going back to the previous Addison Young agent. So anyway, they'll give you insight into what actually is really happening in commercial real estate and what makes it tick. I think one of the, and I'm not going to preempt what they're going to say, but one of the things is any site that's successful, and when I say site, I'm not talking about 2 acres, I'm talking about 30, 40 acres, whatever. Any site that's going to be successful has to have an anchor that acts as a magnet to draw other developments in along with it. And if you're looking at, for instance, one of our potential clients is a warehouse. If you put a warehouse in there, they attract other warehouses. If you put medical in, they tend to attract other medical, although there's saturation in this market for that. But if you put education in, it'll attract, so on and so forth. Multifamily is one of the most attractive because it attracts a diverse of retail, office, medical. It attracts pretty much everything except the warehouse, and except things that upset residents, and we know that goes. So they'll talk about that. I would have to say this with any project, time is of the essence. One can hold one's breath until you're blue in the face and hope that something perfect is going to come along, and it doesn't really work that way. Particularly when you've got a live iron on the fire that can stay hotter and can cool down one way or the other. And also, I would say that no development, at least no development that I know of, short of putting in paradise over there, is going to please everybody. There's going to be compromises. I was saddened that well, saddened is not the word, financially saddened, I guess is a better expression, to have to realize that I needed to cut 50% of the residential out of there, so the townhomes went away. But I have to sell this property, and I have to make compromises to make things happen. The other thing that I want to let Lawson and Nathan address is what happens with the competitive pieces of real estate that are positioned close to my property. And why haven't they sold? Why will they sell? Why are they competition? Are they not competition? Are they structured to have something happen in a particular time period? Will they yield revenue? And one of the things that I did look at is the amount of revenue per square foot that you would yield from a single large development versus smaller ones, and the smaller ones went out. Now the problem from Lake Helen's standpoint is the smaller ones might not all happen immediately. You know, we might put a Longhorn there, and then there might be something else come along, and something else come along, but they don't come along in a clatter of thunder and all get built at the same time, whereas one large facility would, even though it would yield less money total. So there is a balance there, for sure. The anchor concept is again what they'll talk about, and you know, my goals today are to get to a point where we can have dialogue and you can ask questions and you can be in control of what actually happens with the site now. Later when the entitlements revert, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm certainly going to sell the property between this and then. I have to, because I can't let it take me down. Not that that's any of your problem, period. It's not. But I am going to sell this property one way or the other. I would much rather you all participate and help me to get the highest and best use for Lake Helen, and for me, frankly, out of the property. That's his job. He needs to get that done. So my goal is to introduce these concepts to you and let you hear from an independent individual to bring you up to speed on what's really going on with commercial real estate in this area, and also to hopefully get to a point where we can schedule a special meeting, if possible, to reintroduce that element, to ask for the amendment to the comp plan to allow a portion of the site to be determined by you all as residential, which would still require the same document that we talked about months ago. So, anyway, without further ado, I'll introduce you to Lawson Dan.
Hello.
And Nathan Eisler. So,
Nice to talk with you. I was at the last meeting, so I'll kind of kick off on just, I think, my thoughts. And I think a couple of you guys spoke when you were making a decision. And I just want to lead into what I believe translates into two. One was mentioned how times have changed a little bit. I think on the end you had mentioned, you know, when I grew up, the first thing I thought about was trying to buy a home and establish that was the first thing I wanted to do, and it's what everyone did kind of in my family, is get a home and those type of things, and kind of get roots and then get married and kids and that. And that world has changed. It's just part of what's going on, where we'll be 10, 20 years from now, I don't know. But today, the number one factor for a couple buying a home is for a pet. It's unreal, right? You would think it'd be for 100 other reasons. In our day, it's build equity, so you've got money and had all these things. It's just not the way the younger people think of what they want to do. And again, I looked down, I think you said they like to, they don't say it's the same companies as they did. We grew up, family members work for the same company generation after generation. They like to be more mobile. They like to be able to move, do what they want to do on the weekends, and that's just part of this multi-family drive that's out there. So it's just, you're seeing it across the board. Obviously, you can look at what you're going to present, but if you look at gross water on both sides of you this week, it's now right, Beltona and on the other side, or the exits are talking, 1,500 units, I think, on one side, and I don't know, you have the information on the other side. But I think it's overall the demand for this product is there like we've never seen it. And the product has changed. I think that's important to look. If you look at the product that I grew up around, and I'm 58, fourth generation Orlando, was much different than the product that's there today. And I think it's important to realize that it's not it's a nice product. It's a family product. A lot of these have walking spaces and green areas, and it's a great part of a community. The people that live there because they want to live there. It's not because that's all they can afford. It's because that's the lifestyle they want, and the amenities in these packages show it, right? They have pools and athletic centers, and it's a desired way they want to live. And I just think that's important to understand. It's not plugging a hole. It's the way they want to live because of what they want to do in their life, whether that's travel more or be more free or be able to move if they want tomorrow over to the coast or somewhere else. So I think that's one thing I want to get across. And again, I think someone had mentioned it in this discussion, and I think it's a big piece of why the drive is out there and what we've seen. And again, we marketed the property openly. That's one thing I wanted to tell too. There was this is what we kind of left it open to the world, right? To say, hey, here's all the developers in the world, what's the best and highest and best use? And this is what has been driven to us over and over and over again, is this demand. And the second thing I think I want to talk about is, I think we get caught up in, you know, what a property is zoned for, and I think it's important to understand that future land uses and things are put there for a reason. Obviously, sometimes water, sewer, environmental impacts, but inside those, they change. And I think if you look up the whole I-4 corridor, you'll see it from Lake Mary all the way up. I mean, Reinhardt Road is a perfect example of that office park that was originally developed strictly for office buildings, and now we see there multifamily, right? That's a perfect example of a project that was started 20 years ago and now has morphed into what was going to be just an office park, really into a community of a lot of multifamily. It has townhouses. Again, great retail, great shopping and all those things, so that it makes it a very desirable place to live. And another piece I think is just as important in these changes is if you look at the industrial market, I think Orlando is a great example of how, I think when I started there was 4.5–5 million square feet of industrial space in the Orlando market. And if you really looked at where was the industrial space needs, and it was Jacksonville and Tampa, port communities in Miami. The middle of the state really did not have what would be considered bulk distribution space. It just was not. And here we are many years later, and I guess my point is if people hadn't rezoned their property to industrial, but the need now for bulk distribution is incredible. I mean, who would ever thought that there would be a 3 million square foot warehouse in Deltona? And 20 years ago when I started the industry, you would never have put that industrial bulk distribution. And it's just, my point is times change, right? And the way we order products, commerce has changed. Everything I studied and the way goods were brought to the consumer has changed. COVID advanced the e-commerce world much quicker than they thought, and that's why we're having some of these changes in life. Issues, but my point is that the demand for now I think there's over 5 million square feet just in this market. That's as much as was in the entire airport total square footage. And if you go to Lakeland, obviously you're seeing these giant, and in Ocala, a horse community now has 10 million square feet of spec. And my point is not that it's the warehouse, it's the need changes as times change and demands change for different type products as our world changes. And I think this property is an example of it. And whether the zoning on it and the future land use is one thing, but the market, we have marketed to everybody, I think, possible for now over 3 years through one of the strongest markets I think that this we've seen, right? Pre-COVID, COVID, and then after COVID, the world, who knew, would turn around and just light on fire, as everyone's aware of. And here we are, kind of, the market has said this is really what is needed or what the market is demanding for this property. So I was just trying to get a little bit higher level of kind of the world of real estate and kind of what we've seen. And I'll let Nate talk a little bit granular on the projects that we're seeing that I think are similar to some of the scales a little bit different, but what the other communities around who I believe touch you guys are doing and are what's going on. And we can, I'll let you.
Sure. So we put this quick little bullet point presentation together for everybody, just to kind of highlight the site, how we feel if multifamily came in, how multifamily would complement the area, what it would bring to the area. And you go to page 2, We just listed best uses of the site, highway commercial, which we've discussed at length, residential, which we'll also go over, and then hotel and assisted living facilities. Next page is what type of commercial users like to share a site with multifamily developers. As Brendan indicated, multifamily could be looked at as an anchor, and I think we might use the word more like catalyst, where multifamily developers are a lot of times going to be the first ones to come in, develop the infrastructure, bring the utilities all the way through, build the road system. They will make that site work. Retailers will follow. So if the deal we have on the table were to move forward, we have the multifamily group take 15 to 16 acres along I-4. We would then have, call it 10 acres of commercial space with a road system in place. And maybe Lawson can expand upon it, but these retailers, for them to come in and build the road system, do the site work, get the property ready to go, it's a lot of work, a lot of time, and a lot of money. With that catalyst or anchor of a multi-family deal, it just escalates the whole process and helps make those retailers happen.
Yeah, you just always see in these PUDs, DRIs, right, that you'll see this blank, this gorgeous entry, and it's all empty up front, right? And then once the rooftops come in the back, and the cars, traffic's come, then the infill comes in later on, and it's just pure debt, right? Those guys are not gonna put up structures and infrastructures unless they have people eating, and, you know, the demand is there. And we have pushed the retail. I think it will come. I think the C-store will probably be a great corner there. You know, what size that is, they're all over the place, you know. But the new model still is a little bit bigger, which is great. I think the racetrack Wawa concept is kind of 7-Eleven now has one. There's 4 of them. I think it will come. We are light right now. We were in heavy talks with Wawa, and the traffic counts just aren't quite there. I think they will be. But, you know, again, we don't control. We just are told. But definitely is interest. They know there's a C-store needed there. Everyone kind of agrees. And again, I think that will make it happen again. They like to see cars and.
And it's good to note that they don't look at traffic count on I-4. The
Yeah.
traffic count on Orange can't all look at. So
Right,
even though
yeah.
I-4 has hundreds of thousands of vehicles, retailers do not count that as a traffic count and look at a local study.
Yeah.
And we keep mentioning commercial and retail, but really, that's also include medical office space, grocer. It could include office space, it could include, we mentioned hotel, ALF assisted living, self-storage, magnitude of commercial uses.
I believe too, obviously you're going to show it, but I think announced obviously is a big project, 2.1 million square feet of warehouse, one exit up. The groups I talked to were a little hesitant on that, but I believe, you know, if we stay in the commercial world, I think there will be a need possibly for what's called a last mile. It's a little not, if you look at Amazon, right, that's a big bulk distribution, a lot of semis, a little bit heavier of a use. The last mile would be where Amazon touches your product probably before it gets to your door. And what's happening out there, just to sum it up quickly, is Amazon now is touching your package sometimes 5 times before it gets to your doorstep. That cost is going up, obviously, with vehicles, impact fees, all these are trying to touch those a little bit less. I don't even know how they still profit when my wife orders lipstick and it shows up in a package the next day. It amazes me for everything I've ever learned. It doesn't make sense. But my point is, this last mile is becoming, it's a term you'll hear if you haven't, it's becoming much more, that's the vans, the sweat vans, it's kind of like a larger van, it's kind of what you see come to your doorstep and when they ring the doorbell. Those are becoming a little bit more in need in the smaller marketplaces to fill the infill and rooftops. And Amazon is going out and telling their clients, listen, you can't just have a distribution center in 3 areas across the country. I need you to be closer to my distribution. So they're making their clients come in a little bit closer to them. So instead of having one, I'm just gonna say toilet paper because we all went through COVID toilet. So it is, it's amazing. So what's happened is the orders used to go out in hopes of filling the consumers what they thought they needed. Now what's happening is because the consumer's getting upset, you might not be a Charmin client anymore because I couldn't get toilet paper. So now they're holding that product in-house so that order is there. So they're making those clients come in and hold that product. Well, you hold toilet paper for 2 to 3 months. The need is 15 million square feet of warehouse space. So that's what's happening. So my point is, as those needs go up, the consumer is getting so used to this ordering and having it. It's the way we've gotten. And so Amazon, it's not just Amazon and Walmart, all the big guys are saying, listen, we need you can't be in 3 spots. I cannot get your product from Denver to Orlando. So instead, you need to be in 150-mile radius of this. And then in that 150-mile are these last mile deliveries. So I foresee, I'm not saying it could be bulk distribution, but maybe that's a great possible other use for that. And that's jobs and all these other items that we all talk about that I think y'all are looking for, right? Is the commerce side. And I think it's a great, it's not a, those new warehouses, I think, are 32 feet. I think the product's much less. It's van height. It's a little bit not as heavy as usual. So anyway, that's my thoughts on another commercial use that I think would be open for this type of product. And whether that's now or 3 to 5 years from now. But anyway, I think that's something to think about for around this property, not on the, I know we're talking about multifamily, but I think they go together, right? At some point, this property is going to be a multi-use commercial, I believe residential, and then retail, which I think is a great asset to the community.
Yeah, I'd like to interject there that one of the things that I hope we can accomplish together is to have a fairly wide slate of entitlements, pretty much like on the demand side of the equation. So that if an ALF comes along, which technically isn't allowed right now, I don't think, I'd have to purposely didn't leave Rob come today because he'd be interjecting too much. But we'd have to have a fairly wide breadth of commercial types of users, whether it's pet care, whether it's any of the like the things Lawson's talking about. We don't want to overstate what we want to put in there, but we don't want to understate it either. So if somebody comes along, say the sewing machines comes along and says that they want to have a center there to have light manufacturing, we don't want to preclude that from the entitlements either. And I might be talking through my hat here because I'm not exactly fully sure what those entitlements would be from a commercial standpoint, but we sure don't want to close the door on any good opportunities that might come along.
Reason I have
attracted to this.
And one of the reasons I hopped up here, after the meeting, not the last one, the one before, where we actually took the vote on the comp plan change, there's an email exchange I had, and I don't know if you were part of it or not, I can't remember, with Rob, where I threw the idea out is, what if we created a development envelope? And take your the development area. Here's the perimeter of the area. We set the setbacks. We set a height. We got 80 feet height, and then we just completely open up the type of project that could occur within there. To say whatever you want within this development envelope. We want our setbacks, our buffers. But we're going to have this buffer, this in essence is a square area, or whatever size it is, whatever shape it is. But within that area, we would have a very large amount of uses and create the discretion to the end user to come in and submit a site plan. to say, look, this is what we want to do within here, and you can do that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm suggesting.
Yeah,
The
that's
commission,
what-
that we have that flexibility, I think that's.
Right, and you can see that in the email exchange. I don't know if you were involved in that or not, but I was right after, like, a couple days after the meeting.
Well, I paid for it, I know that.
Sure you did. So,
But that's a great idea, because one thing was that came out, and again, is we can all guess, but to try to figure out exactly where a building might go,
yeah, that was,
or it gets tricky, and
well, that's the problem with a PUD. Is, you know, when we did the PUD for the Automall, Brandon knew what he wanted. You had an idea, this is where I want these things. So we were able to do the rendition, we were able to do the preliminary site plan and lay it out the way he wanted. Now, Brandon doesn't know what he wants, because he knows what he doesn't want is he doesn't want the property. So that's basically what he doesn't want. But what the end user wants, it's almost better suited for traditional zoning. Where traditional zoning, you basically say, here are your uses, and here are the development standards, you know, but you just have to meet the city's code, as opposed to, I'm thinking, like if it was a commercial zoning, as opposed to some type of a planned unit. Because the planned unit zoning works really well as long as the end user knows what they want to do. The end user doesn't know what they want to do. They spend a lot of money up front on these site plans and everything, developing something that may or may not even work.
Well,
So,
for sure, I agree with that, and the types of users that we want to attract to the site aren't going to count us as an anchor there to bring them
Right.
forward.
and so,
And whether the anchor is industrial or which to me is less attractive because they won't pay me as much money, and they'll also be looking at the city for some sort of tax incentives, and I don't think that's on the.
and that's really where Rob
So-
and I's discussion went. It
Yeah.
says if you're going to try to get a commercial type development there, it's going to take incentives because everybody else is doing it, which
Well,
is true. So,
fortunately, that's not the case with multifamily. We have had several restaurants and you know, Lawson alluded to it. They look at that head count, and even with the head count, the population count, or I don't want to call them rooftops, but just say population count, we're still a little short, even with the multifamily that we have now, that magic 700, 800, 900 people that they like to see, for a Longhorn or a Panera or any of the others to be on the site, but we'll get there in time.
the employment center land use, so we understand we got land use, we got zoning, two different things. The employment center land use as part of our comp plan is very broad as it relates to commercial. It's not very restrictive. The reason we have to modify our comp plan is to insert any residential in there.
Right.
And that's really the issue. If we went strictly commercial, I know that's what we're talking about, but if we went strictly commercial, I'm not sure we would have to change the land use at all. We would just have to go back and amend the PD agreement to take away the specific uses, eliminate the artist rendition, eliminate the site plan, and come back with a very basic site plan that says, here's your buffer. This is the buffer. We want these setbacks. This is the landscaping we want around it. Within this area, this is your playground, developer. Do whatever you want. We don't care what you do in here. You can have this much higher. We got 80 feet. Keep the 80 feet. We have the buffer and the landscaping, the setback. We've protected the surrounding areas, and then let them kind of have a playground, if you will, within that area, the development envelope that we create.
And we kind of had that marketing approach to it, where it's an open architecture.
this was in Rosewater this morning, I mean, exactly what he's talking about, I think it's just important to see, this is one exit up what you're talking about, right? This was, I think it had a very similar zoning that you're talking about, and then they changed this.
Which one is this? Towards Daytona?
Yeah, it's one, I think it's one up, right?
Well, up or one down.
one down.
One down, sorry, down.
472.
Right, yeah. So.
what's
towards the-
again?
I can never, everybody gets confused as I-4 run east-west.
But I think it's another example of,
Yes.
Yeah, and I would probably go one step further. I'd eliminate, I would not have this line here. I would just say, this is the developable area.
right, yeah.
And then 1 building, 2 buildings, 5 buildings.
But we have to be a little bit cognizant of what the land side has too, because of that goofy line there between the municipalities.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is just it's a little bit larger site, but again, a great sign of what you're seeing out there, where it's gonna be, these are zero lot lines, so very small townhomes, really almost what you would call a home rental type products, and then.
I think ours is much nicer.
Right, yeah, but again, the reason why is the demand and the construction right out there for, and the cost of homes. So anyway, that's a good example of,
But I think from my standpoint, and I think also actually from the city standpoint, the most important thing is momentum here. And we gotta get the thing going, and without momentum, everything is in a full stop. Now, we can get all the entitlements in the world, but if there isn't a buyer there that's suited to that entitlement, how much is it worth? You know, is a Singer sewing machine factory really an entitlement that's of any value if there is no Singer sewing machine factory demand out there? So I think that's why we do need to have reasonably broad, at least to match what's on the demand side, which would prevent any problems, because, you know, if we have that sort of flexibility, I think the commercial users will actually come.
If we opened up the comp plan to remove the sections that have the PUD, and make it the same as the work center, that would be similar to what Dealman has.
Yeah, with the exception of the residential.
Well, you also gotta look at what state law, you're talking about apartments. State law says that anything, I think it's above 6 or 9 apartments is commercial.
Yeah,
So,
but that's a kind of a loosey-goosey thing.
Right.
It's subject to interpretation. I mean, I agree with you, and so.
we would have to have some sort of verbiage in there that would allow that type of commercial also.
and in that sector, I know someone brought up, how many total, and it includes all the way up to Deland, I think, in the picture, right? Of the overlay, for that activity, it goes all the way, not to Deland, up to 44, I'm sorry. How many residential, are there any allowed in that whole activity center, or?
And
I thought someone talked about how
Orange
many,
Camp and 44, there are residential.
and how many, is it, do we know?
Talk about the triangle, sort
I
of.
think you're talking about Steve Costa's property, right?
Yeah, all the way up on that corridor, right, what if the property was?
No, that's not part of the activity center.
Oh, it's not, okay.
Is it even in Lake Helen? I don't think so, is it?
Costa property
On the west side, sorry, the east side is,
on Perbat it is.
but
No,
not.
he's not talking about that. If this were the Orange Camp Point project, he's talking about this triangle right here. Is that what we're talking about?
That's what I thought I was, right, yeah.
This triangle right here.
I think the
It's
industrial-
board that does that.
Yeah, I don't think it's Costa.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think those are two different.
Okay.
That's up
Sorry.
at Summit and McKenzie area, right?
I think it
I
is.
think so.
Yeah, the activity center, that's what they call the Volusia County, Deland, Orange City, Deltona Activity Center, stops at Casadega Road.
Okay, all right.
Now, when you go up further towards 44, you got another one up there, that's Volusia County, Deland.
Okay.
That's where the transfer facility, waste transfer facility.
Yeah, yeah.
little Industrial park.
Little
and
park,
fairgrounds
right, yeah.
and everything is
Yeah.
up there.
Okay. Anyway, I just think this is another example of kind of where someone came in and, you know, they kind of went in one direction, they've just made adjustments because this is what the market came back and said this is what was needed. So, and again, obviously close to you guys in the market, so.
Is there anything specific about Mr. Hurley's site that makes it less marketable than other sites?
Challenge, yes. The wetlands, term, there's some muck up front, so, and you don't have a square parcel, right? That's, in a perfect world, everyone wants a square parcel, high and dry,
And the fact that there's no road, I mean, that's the killer.
with easy access, all, you know, all the things, those are, and then you start kind of working your way back. So you, with little challenges with different municipalities, I think where that road, the way it's gonna run, a little bit of challenging. The cost of the road, a little bit of a challenge. And what else would you say?
I mean, I think there's a reason why after 3 years of marketing efforts and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of calls and emails with every type of user, retail, commercial, multifamily, the deal we have that's closest to the finish line is multifamily on the far east side on the high and dry land. Access road coming to right where you spent the money to stub utilities, you brought utilities in. So you build the road off of the FDOT I-4 frontage road, that would be built, and then we would go straight east, to the east into what would be the multifamily property. To the south of that road, so between Orange Camp and that new east-west thoroughfare would become out parcels, all of which would be high and dry retail commercial that become very marketable.
And we have interest now.
Now to the north of that east-west road is going to be a muck swamp land. That would be,
Which hasn't been the case forever. That's because when they built to the north, they didn't properly represent the drainage, nor did they represent accurately the soils up there, so they flooded my property. So that's another whole story. But anyway.
So some of that's where the water drains no matter what. So there's, everyone in a perfect world, back to your story, is, you have the wetlands or your water retention in the rear. You don't necessarily want your water retention up front, but again, some of these challenges and just getting the road in, there's 3 or 4 different, I guess.
You apparently talked to a lot of prospective buyers, or people who are interested. Is there a common theme as to why they end up saying no? I mean, is it the price of the property? Is it
one site ready. How long will it take to develop the property? So, all these might be entitlements, but essentially when you look at the property, the developer's going to look at Brendan's property versus 1, 2, 3, 10 others, right? Any good developer is going to look at the entire market before they make an offer and purchase the property. Well, if a property is a perfect square, or it's high and dry, it's with no woods, no wetlands, or it's lower priced, or it has really good zoning, or access, or a road system, utilities already. Any one of those reasons are going to select
Speed to market.
that property owners. In development, it's all about speed to market. How fast can I buy it, build it, and sell it? All these developers are buying, building, selling. They're not holding on to it.
So you're talking about they're not end users, they're just
So
flippers.
end users won't come until out parcels, retail land is available for the out parcel. End users would be your 7-Eleven or your Wawa.
They will build the facility.
Or the developer will build it for them, they lease it back to the developer. But either way, those are the groups that won't come until road system is in place and it's ready to go.
And they all have their metrics too, which we talked about earlier. They have this chart that they use, this mystery chart that has to have this point, this point, this point, and they check the boxes, and if the boxes don't check, they move to the next level.
And as you guys know, it's just coming your way, right? I mean, I think it came up and again, I look to you guys, I know you guys brought it up, but it's coming this way, right? I mean, you take a picture of these intersections, I-4 intersections, right? You kind of go out each circle, and so slowly the conversation is gone. And again, you'll in our office, I work now at Foundry, but when we used to talk about the I-4 corridor, which was between here and Tampa, that is no longer the case. Now it's the I-4 corridor. Now it's the corridor between Tampa to Jacksonville. So that's the next corridor that's happening, and you're seeing it with Jamoka land, right? That property sat there forever. Flagler, those intersections, all these intersections around these I-4 corridors are starting to get developed, and you're seeing it again between Ocala and Leesburg. Those intersections used to have an old hotel and a fruit stand. That's no longer the case, right? There's hospitals being put in on those corridors and things like that. So I think it's growth, right? We had a tremendous growth period. We all realized what happened after COVID, and the stories are, at least for what we're seeing in demographics wise, it's going to continue. to grow. Florida is very in demand. The Sun Belt, probably one of the strongest. Texas obviously is up there and things like that, but you could look at the Sun Belt, and that takes us through Nashville, South Carolina, all this, the whole Sun Belt is very, very strong. Birmingham, Atlanta, and you just, for a number of reasons, right? Our weather, taxes, all the things why people are moving. And there's some unbelievable documents out there, but it's not just retirement that we were used to. Right now, the kids don't want to live in Connecticut anymore, and they don't want the house up there, and they want to live in Florida. They came here for COVID, or they stayed in COVID, and used to be their parents would retire here, or some of the things, move here maybe for a job, but you're kind of seeing now just the whole family and everyone moving to Florida or wherever it might be in the Sun Belt. So that's what, the simple answer is the growth is spreading, and as y'all all know, the corridors, I think this is really important too, that when you look at Orlando and surrounding markets, as you well know, you start taking away the green swamp, the properties that the state own, Wekiva Basin, and a lot of the St. John's, right? You start narrowing where growth can happen. There's large green corridors that will just never be developed, right? And so it forces these high and dry areas or non-environmental areas to have growth, and that's what you're seeing. So you're seeing these pockets around.
Isn't that the issue between basically west pollution and east pollution? There's a whole corridor, the recharge fields or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
There's never going to be much development between those two areas.
Yeah, that's correct. And the green swamp would be the same thing. All these giant water corridors that really they've now realized that all this water kind of interconnects and needs to sit and get percolated and slowly make it back in. So that's obviously we saw it.
Under the, I assume you all looked at the land use, not the zoning, that's very specific, the Automall PUD. Under the existing land use, if no changes were made, can you kind of give me the top 5 uses you think would most likely show up there?
Well, I think warehouse distribution is the obvious one. Distribution warehouse. But with distribution warehouse, you're competing against other properties that have high and dry land road system in place. So yes, the 50-some odd acre, you're 30 plus 33 acres. Distribution warehouse might make sense. However, the cost to make it into a distribution warehouse property is going to be, might even be cost prohibitive to a certain degree today. It will be without that anchor to help get the road system in and get the development started. Because there's other properties, and you mentioned it, where they're looking to do bulk distribution of a 1 million square foot warehouse, and they can find a property that is off of roadways, has the right zoning, utilities right there.
Yeah.
That's their issue.
And I don't know that bulk's ready for here. It's coming, but obviously there's other smarter people because they're putting 2.1 million right next door. So, I pushed it. I pushed to try to get, maybe trying to find that use, but,
Okay, so we got a warehouse, what else?
yeah.
Truck stop possibly. That would be a municipal nightmare, but we've been pursued by the FDOT folks about that. Of course, they'd like to close them down somewhere else. I can't remember where the other one is that they want to close down, but they'd be delighted to be there, but, and frankly, maybe, I hope it won't come to that, but I don't think that would be a very attractive use, and I know that the landlord will eventually like to spastic attack about it, because they would regard it as being attractive, not that they have a whole lot of choice, mind you, but it would be a very attractive entryway to the city of Devan.
They wouldn't generate any tax revenue if there's no other thing.
But that too, and then the other use that we had an interest in, I did mention it to Mr. Basso, we had a client that's keenly interested in putting RV boat storage there, but again, the yield per square foot there is a sixth of the yield per square foot for you know, a Panera or a caramel ice cream place or anything like that. So the problem with any of those, I talked to Nathan about it earlier. It's kind of like birds of a feather like to flock together. So if you put a use like that, and then the other types of uses that are going to be attracted in there are the same types of uses. One warehouse begets another warehouse. Really, you know, I hate to keep beating the drum, but if you look at Beacon Lake or Rosary Square or any of the other developments in here that are anchored by multifamily, they're far more attractive than a truck stop or a warehouse or a light industrial or boat and RV storage facility. Even though some of the boat and RV storage facilities are enclosed, it's still kind of yang. And from a municipal standpoint, I don't think it's not going to bring a whole lot of revenue either.
And, you
It
know,
doesn't bring a lot of others, does it?
gas station, C-store, the Wawa, 7-Eleven, yeah, they want to be here, but that's 2 acres.
We've had interest from a grocer, but they need to have proximate
Yeah.
residents, and that's,
What about movie theater?
I don't know of any, there's not.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole movie
Click to
theater.
Marshall, it was a hard pass. You know,
I think the movie theater world is in big trouble, right? Everyone knows it. We have the downtown Orlando one, and it's, they haven't paid the,
It's a mess.
right, they haven't paid the rent in 4 years, so,
Yeah,
that's,
I was looking on around, the closest one's about 3-4 miles.
that's
that's Clifton
across
Marshall.
from the Amazon,
Is that where it is?
yeah.
what I see happening is, as, I think a developer, whoever ends up with this property, in a perfect world, I would see, the road getting in, the multifamily getting started, the retail will come, because as soon as the road is in, it's gonna draw, it's just, no one believes anything until you see a road, and it's just the way it is, right? And you see a hard corner, and all of a sudden someone says, oh my gosh, there's a hard corner there, I need to be there. It's just the way the development world, and then to your answer.
Spin their wheels when they don't know.
Right, and then I see probably a developer probably having, and this is something that's, I think, needs to be put out there is, they're probably gonna hold this a while, right? This is not, selling these other parcels is gonna take time. And I think that's been a challenge too, this is not a project that's gonna come and everything's gonna get built in the next couple of years. I see a demand for a hotel at some point. An ALF, I think, would absolutely be here. They do their demographics, the closest one is now just on the other side of Lake Mary.
They can move them right over the fence.
Well, you gotta remember when, the ALF is they have their demographics and, it's just the way it works is, they need to be by retail, I'm gonna go visit my mom, I'm gonna go eat lunch here, and go visit her, I'll take her to lunch or whatever it might be. That's,
Being close to a hotel is helpful, being close to some medical,
right,
just like we have there in Victoria.
yeah,
And also not far from that hospital, it's a very key thing for ALS.
yeah. So I see it slowly infilling as those needs are, and I think you put a great point out there is if the commercial use will come, and if we put it in your box, as you say, and let them decide kind of if it's the uses you guys want. Just allow those uses in that bucket that we're talking about, and they'll design it as the market needs it. But I believe, what would you say if you put the apartments in and the retail's coming, right? They want it, and then what would you say, 3, 5, 6 years, assuming a strong market, no recessions and things like that, and I think the infill will just happen.
Well, one of the things, as you know, Mr. Early, that your PUD expires in November, October. So, I know one of the concerns, I shouldn't say it was a concern that I have, but you have certain development entitlements over there, that once your PUD.
They're useless though.
Well, no, they're not. The use is, but the amount of square footage buildings you have, 80-foot tall buildings, those aren't useless.
Because nobody wants to buy that, but to build those.
Well,
I wish. I don't know, but it's slow, but I promise.
They don't want to buy it the way it's laid out. And they don't want to buy it from an auto mall or an auto dealership. But once your PUD expires, you don't have the right to build 80 feet anymore either. So, and whether or not this commission, at the time you came back and asked for it, would grant you that same amount of development entitlements, I don't know if they would or they wouldn't. You know, obviously this commission can't commit to it. You can't bind future commissions. So, that's why I should go back to what I suggested to Rob, is we take the beneficial development entitlements you have, 80 feet, the traffic impact, the water and sewer impact that you already have, preserve those, and then create an area where people can do whatever they want, within reason. But I mean, we don't, even if we're gonna do out parcels, you have to create the lot. Now, usually that's a subdivide, you subdivide out the lot. Well, what if somebody wants a bigger lot than what you subdivide?
Yeah, it's not interesting, flexibility is key. I mean,
Well, that's the way we've been, that's,
So-
you're 100%.
Yeah.
You're struggling with that.
You're 120.
Right, yeah.
So,
It needs a master plan developed.
yes. And, well, this is the problem with the PUD. PUD works really well with someone who knows exactly what they want to do. It doesn't work at all for someone who doesn't know what they want to do. So I'm trying to figure out a way, how can we give the benefits of the PUD
Yeah.
and get rid of the detriments and say, look, from a PUD standpoint, this is what we're concerned about, which is true. We're mainly concerned about how tall and what's close to the road, the adjoining property owners. That's really what the city should be concerned about. What occurs within there, whether you have 1 building, 5 buildings, 8 buildings, just go up, you can't go higher than this, and we have vested entitlements right now in terms of impacts, in terms of traffic impact. All that stuff goes away when your PUD goes away.
which I don't care about, because that buyer doesn't exist anyway,
Well,
so
No,
there's no.
Yeah, we try to exploit those, right? I mean,
but see, if we amend this, don't take offense to this, buyers don't want to come back to the public for approval, That's, if I'm a buyer, I'm like, well, that's fine, you have no entitlements. You're entitled to build something in Automall, which I don't want to build. So I gotta go back through the public hearing process, which is effectively a total rezoning.
That's gonna detract from the sale of the property too.
Yeah, exactly.
PUD has been my enemy, not that.
It was your friend initially,
Initially.
but now it's your enemy.
PC.
But look, if we go and say, let's amend the PUD, extend it, give it some more time, and within this development area, we create the flexibility that someone can do whatever they want, more or less, within reason, but they don't have to come back to the city commission for zoning approval to do it. You just go straight to site plan. Now, that's going to come back through the city commission, you'd have to do that anyway. But don't go back through the zoning process, where you have to go through and rezone it again. I would just like to create this area. Here's the areas. I know it's not the square everybody wants, but this area within which we protected the boundaries. You can't go higher than this. Whatever you do in that area is up to you.
and you get X, you get so many square feet of this and this, or whatever. Okay.
Whatever it is, your limitations are your concurrency. You can't exceed your water concurrency you've got. You can't exceed your traffic count that you've already gotten.
Which is massive anyway.
Which is massive. So I'm trying to find ways to make this property marketable, because I sense the commission really doesn't want residential. So how do we make commercial, industrial as marketable as possible?
Well, the problem with all of that, though, Scott, ultimately is who's gonna buy it, and that's what we were
Well,
trying to do.
we can only, but you're trying to sell something that's zoned automall. It has the land use is great, the zoning is very limited.
But we've done our best to be agnostic to that in the hopes that if we get a buyer, that we can deal with that.
But what I'm saying is, you're trying to say, show some interest, and then we can go back and go through the whole process again.
Well, we have.
What I'm saying, if you had to be able to present something to say, look at this, you have, say, 33 acres or 30 acres within which you can do whatever you want. These are all the things you can do. And here are your concurrency thresholds. Stay within this and stay within this footprint, and you can lay it out however you want.
Well, we're trying to do that with what we've got here. And-
But there's a difference.
What you're saying
There's
is
a diff-
everything except residential.
No, well, what I'm just saying is this, the difference between what I'm proposing and what you're proposing is, you're proposing, you still have to get to the city to approve what you're proposing. What I'm saying is, get the city to approve it, so you can tell them, you ain't gotta go back for approval. These are your entitlements. That, I don't know, you can make commercial property any more marketable than that. If that doesn't sell it, then that property's not gonna sell for commercial, bottom line.
But what is multifamily in your definition of commercial?
No.
But that's the problem.
Well, then we got, but I'm just saying, we gotta go, I'm trying to make your, see, that land was never intended for commercial, for multifamily. You look at the comp plan, there's zero homes planned for the future in that area, none. The whole employment center zoning does not contemplate one single new resident over there, period. So, to get residents, that's why we have to amend our comp plan to get what you wanna do.
But this is a bird in the hand, though, Scott, that's the point.
Yeah, but
And this will also.
it's a bird in the hand that's fixed to bite you because they already said no. I'm just saying, they've already said
I'm
no.
hoping that we can get beyond that and
Well,
and look at the
but it's
revenue
gonna-
we generate. You know?
Well, you presented all that, and I don't wanna get too argumentative here, I'm just saying, they said no. There was a no on that issue, unless they changed their vote and that they're willing to go. That amendment that came forward,
But I
that's
didn't
gonna be
change,
done.
I changed it to 50% commercial
But
and
the-
50% residential,
I
so it's a big difference from what we did.
There is, but the comp plan change that you submitted doesn't contemplate that. We still have to go back and rewrite the comp plan to make sure that it can only be built that way. Because right now, what you have is a comp plan that only allows commercial. If they adopted what you proposed,
Which
it
is
could be
100%
all,
commercial, that was the problem.
is 100%, but now it's 100% residential.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. It'll allow 100% residential, which you proposed.
That's not what we're proposing, though.
Well,
We
with that-
obviously, we'd have to change that, that's why I'm here. is
We'd have to change it very drastically to make sure it can address,
Of
if
course.
this commission is willing to entertain any level of residential. So after we finished that conversation 2 meetings ago, I was trying to say, how can this city make this commercial property as attractive as possible?
But what I would say to that, Scott, and I'm not trying to be argumentative with you, but we have marketed, they have marketed this property as though it were an next thing. Forget the fact that it's got 80-foot tall buildings and everything else. We're just looking for anybody to buy it. And it doesn't matter whether and the thing is,
But
if you look at the market
Brandon,
today, it's
buyers-
just not there for what you're talking about.
Well, that could be, but what I'm saying, your property has zoning right now, so you can sit there and tell people to ignore whatever you want. When somebody goes to buy this property, their question is, what can we do?
But that's
And
why
they
I've
see
done
that
that
offer.
for 2 years with Hill Point. Hill Point has been waiting at me to try and get, I mean,
To
I'm a
resident,
contractor.
I understand that, but I'm saying from a commercial standpoint, what you haven't presented to anybody is a PUD approval from this city that creates a blank slate.
It's a chicken and egg, Scott.
Oh,
It's a chicken and egg.
And maybe you can add in that that's not necessarily the case. What you're proposing that the PUD were changed to allow for just the commercial uses, we have fire.
No,
Okay, so, I mean,
take the PUD and see the PUD, you usually typically see how the PUD is gonna be laid out. Where the structures are, where the roads are, and all that other stuff. Eliminate that.
and allow a blanket of
And
uses.
then increase the amount of uses
Yep.
that the PUD allows, and does that make this more marketable?
Yes, but not a fast marketable property. That doesn't make it fire in 2 months, 3 months.
No, it
It's
may
still
not.
gonna be a long,
Yeah.
long process because of.
10 years more likely.
Well, I think, again, what you see in front of you is a perfect example of the combination of commercial and residential, and you're seeing it across the board. I think that's, again, these are just,
Just one more example that was in the growth spotter 2 weeks ago. This is in Deltona. You know where the epic movie theater is?
Then commercial.
They're proposing 1,200 multifamily units plus other,
Sorry, where is this?
where the movie theater is.
Epic.
Yeah, Epic. So they're proposing, that was built as commercial,
right.
and distribution warehouse.
Okay.
Now they're adding hotel, multifamily, and others. Just another example.
Can I interject just for a minute? I'm just gonna talk about some numbers, some facts, some things that we know. And if anybody disagrees with any one of them, please let me know right away. Does anybody here think that that property over there is not going to be developed? Okay, we all know it's going to be.
It's gonna happen eventually.
What we don't know is when. Does anyone think that the infrastructure in Lake Helen is woefully inadequate? You think it's fine?
No, I don't.
Oh,
I thought you
You're
said.
talking about in Lake Helen,
Yes.
theirs is gonna be
I'm not talking about.
infrastructure dealing
Currently, the infrastructure of Lake Helen.
is inadequate, yes.
Lake Helen is in the bottom 10% of cities in the state of Florida as far as taxes allowable from ad valorem. And ad valorem tax is based on property values. Everyone agree with that?
I don't know. I
Okay.
think we're higher than that.
Yeah, well, the last survey we were at 93%. Let's just say we're closer to, way closer to the bottom. Does everyone agree that the number one problem we have in the city of Lake County is the opportunity to generate great revenue to pay for the inadequate infrastructure we currently have? Does anybody think that that isn't our biggest problem?
Should be, if it ain't.
Okay, so when you look at what I'm looking at, okay, I'm looking at an opportunity to be able to start to fix the biggest problem that we have in this community, so we can start to fix the rest of the problems. That's just the revenue side. In addition to the revenue, when you talk about infrastructure, one of the other things that this project is going to do is provide a hub that allows us to jack and bore underneath the interstate so we can tie onto sanitary sewer. I know nobody in this city wants sanitary sewer. Everybody's happy with septic tanks. But the state of Florida, the health department, they're going to mandate at some point either high-end septic tanks, which currently are $25,000 to $30,000 a piece, or sanitary sewer. It is an opportunity that I don't know how it comes along again or when it comes along. We're not facing it yet. We're already facing the problems that we're having just in our bottled water. We're already facing our stormwater problems. But we look at this project that's being presented to us, and we're seeing negatives. And that's good. That's our job, see positive in the negatives. I think,
Well, as humans, we're kind of designed to see the negatives first. Because that's how we protect ourselves, that's how we stay alive.
Absolutely.
Innately.
but with that said, it's our jobs to also look at the positives,
Absolutely.
weigh them, and decide what's the best. Now, really, the answer is, are we willing to wait? How long before we start to get a fix like this? I don't see many other fixes like this coming down the pipeline. And I don't know how long the city can wait for this. So I personally believe we both have common ground in that Mr. Roy wants to develop this property. I'd love to see the revenue and the stub for sanitary sewer and the road that goes into the other 8 acres of property that's on the other side, that's commercial industrial. So now that we talk about nobody wants to do anything to the roads there, this project puts the road there. So when I voted for this the first time, and the second time, and the third time, those were the things that were driving it for me. Okay? I saw the negatives. I saw them. And I flushed them out. But, okay, these positives far outweigh the negatives. Far outweigh. And so it made it simple for me. I have some things to do, and not to discount any of your time. I mean, you're all extremely busy people and stuff, but there's nothing that's going to be said here today that's going to make me want to turn down your project. There's nothing you're going to say to make me want to do it any more than I already do. I just appeal to my colleagues to look at the positives, okay, and weigh the needs of the city, okay, based on that, rather than just the negatives. And you guys will let me go. I'd be most appreciative.
Are you in a hurry, or can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
I know you're in a hurry, I get it.
No, no.
My only question would be, for you on your way out the door, I get that. Mr. Hurley's proposing this residential as an anchor, which I understand, as you need somebody to come in, give you enough of a base to, like you say, start that road, which is huge. That, I agree with you, that road coming in, creating that frontage, opening up that other 80 acres, that's huge. And looking way down the road, if it doesn't happen, nothing ever happens. And very few things are big enough to make this happen. But that residential is what he's saying is a big enough anchor now to make that happen. Do you see any other kinds of
Yes, I do.
things that could make that happen?
I see a hotel, I see a Publix, if you will, Wawa's, but any of those huge anchors can do that. But my question to all my colleagues is, how long are you willing to wait for that anchor to pretend itself? In other words, I believe if we waited long enough, we'd get the anchor that we want. I have no doubt of that. But how long can we afford to wait for that? That's my big concern. I've been concerned, Cameron, you've been around with me for a long time, and I've been thumping this around for a long time. And all I've seen is us get further and further and further, and the amount of debt that is staring me in the face to tackle these infrastructure needs, is just climbing and climbing. And so, I get the negative side of our mental image of the apartment complex, but we have the Great Wall of China between the heart of the city and where all that's going.
It's bigger than the Great Wall of China.
And so, I'll be happy to ask anybody else's questions, but I just, to me, I encourage you to figure out a way to make this thing work, because I believe it's in the best interest of all of us. I really do.
I think that to open up the marketability of the property, we need to not wait until October for the PUD to expire, but go ahead and work on changing the PUD now. Because we can do that within a month.
I concur.
And that would, well,
We can do that.
a couple special meetings.
That's true.
But
even if-
that would increase the marketability of the property alone.
Even if we want to
Put it as another positive step.
Even if we want to put a similar product we have now, it makes it easier, but anyway.
The bird in the hand is much better than the bird in the bush. This is the bird in the hand. And I think if you look at shops in Beacon Lake, if you look at Rosalie Square, if you look at a handful of others that you've gotten right there, the blended commercial with that multifamily as the anchor is the reality. Anything else, it doesn't matter if we have entitlements for everything, but nobody cares about the entitlements, and there's no buyer that's levered by those entitlements, it doesn't matter.
And here's the other thing, is don't lose sight of the fact that when you see something, that's not really what I like, I like this. I really don't care for strawberry shortcake for my birthday, I want German chocolate. And so you wait for German chocolate, and the next thing you get is a freaking lemon tart, okay? You hate lemon tart. Don't lose sight of the fact that as much as you may not like this, something else worse than this can wind up there. And I'm not saying that to scare anybody into doing something, it's just a reality. It's the truth. Okay, so,
And there are, thank you. There are a lot of things that can, there is a lot of other property in the world. We see these couple of examples of it. Look before us. You look at this example, this is empty. All that behind the hospital, that's empty. There's huge areas of land, and we want to talk about Publix going here. Well, Publix, we talked to Publix, and then they built right down the Orange Camp instead. They're done now. They're off the table basically because they're that close already. These things we know.
Another store can move in.
Sure, when Dixie might be there, what,
They have to have those homes right there next to them, which.
But what I'm saying is that this land, while it seems special to us, is in many ways very common as well. It's an I-4 exit, yes, that's special, but there's a lot of I-4, close to the I-4 exit land. So while we may wish that X would go there. We can't expect it to simply because it seems awfully nice to us. These are the gentlemen that Mr. Hurley brought today that know what people really are looking for. And that's one of the main reasons I was interested in having this meeting, so that we can not leverage, but tap into their expertise and learn more about what makes this special, what limitations there are on just how special it is. Everybody thinks their child is the prettiest one in the beauty pageant, but there's a whole lot of beauty pageants in the world. I'm terrible at mixing all my metaphors here. Before you ask, because I had one more thing I was going to throw this direction next, is if we did want to do this, where I have trouble, and where my vote was initially a no on the project in general, and then now to reconsider, and I've ended up in the swing vote here, because we're relatively divided on this, and I just voted to reconsider. If we put in what we were considering was to add 300 apartments and 152 townhomes, and that's what I voted no to, and I don't want to vote for that level of residential. Reducing the residential, as you picked up on, is what I felt was necessary to make this acceptable to the citizens and the community of Lake Helen. But simply reducing a number doesn't necessarily change, because right now it's just a number. Like you say, the layout is very vague. If we reduce the number from 452 to 300, just changing that number, how does that affect, how do we as a commission change that number where we have a nice drawing or two, but it doesn't, those are just ideas, they're not set in stone. So how would we as a commission reduce that number and create a scenario where these need to be in this area, the commercial would be here, the buffer you're talking about, it even makes that even a little bit bigger. How do we control that? If you understand what
That's sort of like the question I was going to ask, actually. I think the first step is to make sure, to find out if there are at least 3 members on the commission who are willing to entertain some level of residential on this property. Because if there's not 3 members willing to entertain it, then we just have commercial, and that's kind of the discussion. So if we have at least 3 members who are willing to entertain some level of residential over there, then the next question is, what level? What level of residential are you willing to do? And I think we would still follow through with the same plan that I had before outlined, in that, because you really, we have to change the comp plan. In the comp plan, you don't get the level of detail you're looking for. You would have, this area would be designated for apartments. This area would not be, but what it would actually look like would not come to fruition until you did the PUD zoning. And before, what we were doing is we were kind of going on the same 2 tracks that would eventually merge together and come before you for a final reading, where when you did second reading on your comp plan change, you would also be doing a second reading on your PUD rezoning to show you how that property would be developed. Now, one of the things you always have to remember is when we, just like with the Automall, when we approve a rezoning, that means we allow this. Doesn't mean it's going to get built. We can't go force them to build it, So if we approve some type of a change, I think it's safe to say the residential is going to go first. When, if ever, that commercial is going to come, may not happen. But that's, we can't do anything about that. All we can do is say this is where the commercial will be, this will be the residential will be. I haven't seen I think it would be, I guess it's either north or east. The side of the property that has the closest to Daytona would be where the apartments go, where there's currently planned.
Northeast corner.
Okay. And then the other property I would say we ought to consider just making a blank, the development envelope for commercial I talked about, but just make it smaller now, because now you have the residential apartments over here where we can get into details. We would like to see a plan on that. but create some flexibility on the commercial, because when you start doing out parcels, you know, somebody may want 100 by 100, somebody may want 200 by 200. They would have to go through the subdivision and site plan process, but from a zoning perspective, give them the flexibility to not have to come back and rezone the property to do it.
And just on that apartment side, and you guys, in that second look or whatever, that's when you would kind of get a look at what it would look like, right?
The rezoning.
Right, okay.
The rezoning wouldn't have the details.
Right,
So,
yeah.
it wouldn't be site plan level details, construction drawings, but it would be.
Comfort of what the product's gonna look like.
Yeah, this is
Four by
what-
four.
Well, this is what the buildings will look like. This is basically where they're gonna be laid out.
Yeah.
This is where the amenities will be, this is where the parking will be, things like that.
Yeah.
In those developments. It's
Okay.
like any other PUD.
Right, yeah.
But you do a PUD for the apartments, and then you would kind of have a blank PUD that creates some flexibility over here for the commercial zoning, just to keep it as marketable as possible. And we would have to, I don't know if we would have to create we would either have to create a new zoning, or we'd have to modify an existing zoning to do this. And if you remember the plan that we were working on when we brought you the comp plan change, and if you approve on first reading that comp plan change, it was going to have to go to the state of Florida for their review and everything, and that takes some months to get that information back. During that period of time, we were going to look at our zoning code to see what zoning designation that we were going to use, and either create a new one or modify an existing one. Go back to the planning board with a rezoning of that property, get their recommendation, come to you and do first reading on a rezoning. And then, if we have the comp plan comments back, we would bring it all to you as a second reading. And the first thing that you would do is do second reading on the comp plan change. And if you don't like the end result of this zoning, you vote no on the comp plan change. Because this is legislative action, rezoning is quasi-judicial, so you don't want to say yes to legislative and no on quasi-judicial, because that's harder, you got to support that, you really don't have to support your decision over here. So that's what I would still contemplate. But there's if we don't have the support, we need to know kind of the parameters of the residential that would be allowed, this commission would allow. I'm not saying it has to be unanimous, but if there are at least 3 commissioners who, including the mayor, who, and I think Rick is one, so, if there's. Yeah, I think so. So, if there's at least 2 more who want to give staff the direction to start working on a comp plan change, the parameters of which we could bring back, and then kind of do the same thing, go through the comp plan process. If we approve that, then we'll start working on the zoning stuff.
Well, we've made it to page 3 of what Nathan brought to us today, out of what looks to be maybe 8 or 10 pages. Do you want to go through more of this before we?
A lot of it we've discussed, but I want to
Okay.
really quick, page 4 just shows you the marketing. We're an international firm. We spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars every day on marketing across all of our properties. So it has exposure on every major website for commercial MLS. So it's being exposed to buyers in Europe, South America, they'll own it everywhere, right? We've had good marketing. Next page just shows some quick connections as to what we've actually been doing. And you'll see, this is over the past 12 months. We've had 21,000 people view the property page online with 1,400 views per month. 8,800 people have been reached. So the point is, it is being exposed. It's not like we found one multi-family developer and put it, found it and moved on. We're doing our job. We're really making our hourly rate here.
Yeah. And that does help us put this in perspective.
It's just trying to,
Yeah, this is your business, you don't have to share that with us, but I appreciate you sharing that with us, so that we understand the perspective here a little better.
it's also worth noting, we don't represent the apartment developer, we don't have a relationship with the buyer. We are client, Brendan's our client. The multifamily group came to us, so make sure there's no conflict of interest. They came to us and after months and months and months of time, it was the highest and best user we could find at that moment, and that's why we're sitting here today.
And we are pleased, too, that there is a retail group that has shown pretty strong interest. Obviously, they're wondering what's gonna happen on the multifamily side, but that we have a group that is in a negotiation or talking, which shows as farthest we've gotten for the whole, what we consider the front retail piece. So just throwing that out there. I don't know what their look and feel is. They're a national retail group.
It'd be your gas station on the corner, so off of the I-4 frontage road entrance, gas station with two parcels. Most likely it would be some type of quick service, QSR, McDonald's type place. That would be to be determined. Most likely the developer would build the gas, build the QSR, and then make the third type thing.
Maybe a little retail center with maybe 3 tenants. Not sure how this looks. So anyway, will they close? Will they buy? How long will that take? I don't know. I think probably the furthest after we've had multiple kind of retailers, what I call retailers, just commercial, however you want to say it, get to a certain point and then just say, hey, we're going to wait until we see what happens.
Would it be fair what y'all envision is an apartment complex in one area, and then commercial uses in the other area, not really integrated as a single community per se, because those commercial uses are going to be facing that main road, and they're going to be, as opposed to like, Colonial Town Park, where you drive into it and the commercial uses are, the apartments are on the outside and the commercial uses are interior. There's a movie theater and all these restaurants and shops in there, and it's really, the only thing that really faces the main road is the Publix as part of it too. The rest of it is all integrated interior facing things.
We call it live, work, play.
Yeah.
So you're really not, that's not really something that you're thinking here. You're thinking about there's going to be two separate.
Big enough for that concept, is it?
Well, yeah, it is, because it's 22 acres. Colonial Town
It's,
Park.
I would say that we are just not quite there yet. As in, Lake Mary, it took how many years to get to that point for Lake Mary?
Yeah. I just go there a lot, that's all.
Garden style is what the term would be. That's just kind of
Garden style.
Yeah, apartments.
So
That's what you're going to see.
yes, you would turn off the Orange County and turn off an east-west road, you get an out parcel retail on the right. Eventually, we envision more retail on the left, potential self-storage, ALF hotel, and then that road would dead end into an apartment entrance.
The developer who's under contract until the end of this month offered to come here today, and I told him to put in the cart before the horse, frankly.
You talking about the apartment developer?
Yes, Stephen Campisi. But he has folk that where he specializes in that industry. That's all he does. He doesn't do medical. He doesn't do retail or any apartments. Yeah, that's his gig. He's got them all over. It's very successful and nice product. But he does have developers that work with him that have retail that faces and serves, and he regards it as an amenity, which it is. I mean, if you're in an apartment complex, you don't have to get on Orange County, drive all the way down to Publix to get your milk.
Well,
So he regards the surrounding commercial as an amenity. And to your point, we need to have, if we can get to this point, we need to have a sort of an open stage where we can put things where they work best from an access standpoint. If you can imagine having a grocery store next to I-4 where you got to drive all the way through all this, that's not going to fly. And the neighbors aren't going to like to have cars driving through their facility either. So.
And there's uses that we could sit here all day, right, in the commercial world. That's what's, as you well know, right, that are great for the community. There's concepts being developed out there, right, whether it's healthcare, you're seeing
Pickleball.
back in the box, right, a lot of the medical is changing, right? You're seeing it pushed out, some of those. You're seeing the second bed communities where I'm dealing with one down in Kissimmee now. It's the hospitals really want to save their beds, right, for the critical care. But for the rehab side and some of it where you don't need the urgent nurses with all machines, but you need to stay 3 or 4 more days in the hospital, maybe it's finishing up on a certain medicine after surgery and things like that. So maybe those are things that you're seeing, those are 60 bed, 80 bed, 6 acre type parcel. I'd never even heard of it. Now they're going, these facilities are coming up all over the place, right? Because the insurance like it, because you're not getting the bill is expensive from the hospital, but they serve a great purpose because you still need to have 24-hour care. So again, as the world changes, I keep saying this, right? You didn't see this 10 years ago, now they're popping up all over the place. So again, we could sit here and guess all day what that commercial use might be. It's easy to say hotel, but that's a great example, I think, of a 6 acre use that might be there. It's off, they like obviously I-4 and being off I-4 at those hospitals. So
We had a rehab, guy, Mark Goldman, he's a good friend of mine, orthopedic surgeon. And to that, I've never had the misfortune of using him. He's talking about a rehab center too, that's pretty much, but again, it's, we had the conversation and everything's glorious until they find out that they gotta spend all this money to build a road.
Until they look at a place that doesn't even have a road on it. I get that.
And that's
So that
what
brings me back to where my mind was going with this workshop, and what Scott said a few minutes ago, that it comes down largely to those votes that were no votes, which were the three of us. It was actually, anyway. Yay or nay on exactly how it was all worded is irrelevant. We know that we said votes that were no to the residential. Does any of this change either of your minds as far as using residential? Take Mr. Hurley's assertion here that this is an anchor which can bring in additional commercial. Does that work in y'all's minds for this, or like Rick said, do we want to wait to see if this, I don't remember his exact ones, we got a strawberry tart in front of us, do we want to see if we get German chocolate or lemon tart? You were a yes, well, you talking.
I still got an opinion.
You do, I know, but I did want to open it up to them.
Well, I might influence on you.
Okay, go for it. Go for it.
My votes when I did it in the past weren't based on Mr. Hurley wanting to put in apartments or townhomes or anything. It was based on the information that was in that PUD. It was so restricted, and my vote was to get it opened up to discuss it, to change the PUD. And that was the whole thing with it. We need to change that PUD to make the property more marketable than what it is now. It's too restricted, except on D-Land's side. D-Land's side is way open. The other thing is, if you want to see what this intersection is going to look like, take a look at Google Earth and pull up Saxon and I-4, LPGA and 95, and use that timeline bar and go back to 85, I think that's the earliest one it goes, and just hit the tabs coming up and watch the development on those intersections. I mean, look at Saxon. It started as a 2-lane road going over I-4, similar to Casadega Road going over I-4. And look at it now. It exploded. 472 is getting ready to do the same thing. Ours is next. It's going to come up. Why not open it up so that we can benefit from it earlier than what we will in the future?
Well, that's, much like you said, your vote was to open this up. My vote to reconsider my vote was simply to keep this conversation going, so that we could have this conversation right here today. What are y'all's thoughts?
So I'll start, I guess, because I understand where you're coming from, Roger, and I'm in agreement. It's going to change no matter if we want to sit and hide under the blankets or not. But I guess where I'm hung up, and I don't understand quite yet, is we continue this conversation, we continue talking about high-density residential, but we took out the townhomes in favor of the apartments in the last conversation. And so I guess I'm just really not understanding the direction that is that you're wanting to go, or what your developers are wanting, and how we play into that, because I'm really not interested in apartments or high-density residential, but I'll consider anything, like we've talked about, I'll consider it, and talk with people in the community, as you all will as well, but I haven't heard anything about condos, but I've heard about apartments only. So I guess I'm kind of hung up on what your vision is and how we can get to a place where we're able to work together and move forward.
Well, my vision is to have the property that will actually sell, as opposed to a property that in theory would sell, could sell, may sell. And it's kind of like a bird in the hand. And when I look at these examples that we have here, with the
Can you, sorry to interrupt you, could you just specifically state what the bird in the hand is right now?
The bird in the hand is Stephen PC Hilton. We have him under contract.
For apartments.
For the apartments, yes.
Okay.
We also have
why did the townhouses as opposed to the condos? Why did the condos?
Well,
as
one
opposed
was
to
the
apartments?
taxes, we heard, some of the feedback was, you were concerned about homestead and the tax base, and apartments, we can slim down a little bit. I mean, I think you don't want to get under 275, then they don't, the cost to build them.
Well, and also the attractiveness of the product to other merchants goes down.
Right, so that was, again, trying to be sensitive, and we just felt like there was so much pushback with that number, the total, so that's where we.
Probably apartments are one of the more marketable things right now.
Yeah, and just the market need, I think it, I just feel it's changed, and if you go to those communities today, if you haven't, you should go through some of them, because I think that they are a nicer community, and again, we're talking about not interfering with this core part of, obviously you get off I-4, you come this way, it's unique, right? This is an unbelievable drive going down this road and coming by here. Well, you can't find it, and we're an hour outside of Orlando, and but this is really next to, and I heard someone in our meeting get up and say how loud I-4 is and all that, but these people want to live there. They want to live there because it's close to I-4, and this is the product that they want. And that's why they like being, believe it or not, next to I-4. If you look, they want to be off the exit, right? These guys are coming in, they get off work, they go play their games, they do whatever, they want to be close to an intersection. So that's really, and we're showing you within here, that's really, you're talking 2,000 units on both sides of you guys. And so obviously there's just that need for that product. It's just, and I believe it's a good product. It houses families and good families, and it's just what they are looking for today. It's not what, I've always been a home person, but the younger people like apartments. They like the flexibility, and again, I told the story, but that's kind of what they're looking for, and that's why I'm not a developer, I don't do it, but that's why all these, you're seeing what we've been giving you is that type product is really what's attractive out there. And again, I think we turned a little bit more towards, away from the townhouse, just because from the tax base was, we kind of heard someone talking about, well, it could be homesteaded and that wouldn't benefit you guys from the tax base. So that was a little bit, and to your point, because you brought it up, is the financing on the condos is a little challenging right now, so that's why you're not seeing, if you remember in the late 80s mortgage, all the apartments were being converted to condos. The cost of those units now has gone up, and the financing is a little challenging on it, so that's why you don't see that happening as much. Will some product come out financing that allows them to be converted back again? That could happen, but that's why the product's not out there today, because the cost per unit for a buyer, price them out, and they don't want to own it. That's really the other thing. They kind of want to be able to move and go on like they want to. So, yeah.
But I don't think I answered your question exactly about why the multifamily versus the townhomes. I thought I had to sacrifice something, because at least in the PLD or CMD, I know which is a separate entity, I bring it up, the feeling was, hey, listen, why is the land getting all the commercial and we're getting screwed with no commercial? So that was kind of my mindset. I said, well, I got to sacrifice
That's definitely a
something.
question I had. I mean, honestly,
Well,
almost in that exact same question. So the way you phrased the question is almost exactly right. It was very frustrating looking at all the residential being in the Lake Helen portion and all the commercial being in the land. It felt like very much like we were the four-step, the redheaded step.
Now Lake Helen actually, with my new plan, Lake Helen actually has more commercial in the land.
That's a good point. Charlene, did you have anything you wanted to ask or?
No, because that got answered, that's what I was saying.
Well, where is your
where are
your scales?
I'm like Rick, I'm set on no, he's set on yes, and I'm set on no.
Okay, so y'all are irrelevant.
That's
Not
right,
really,
yeah.
not really, but
Heather, can I ask
it's good to know. I appreciate it.
You know, there's kind of on the fence.
Well, and I'm kind of on the fence.
And leaning towards early side of the fence,
Okay.
more so than Heather.
Well, Heather, you referenced high-density residential. What do you consider high-density, medium-density, low-density residential? What trips it to be high-density for you? It's usually based on units per acre.
Right.
And so I didn't know.
I would say anything over 4 per acre, right? Or 4 per quarter acre, sorry.
4 units per quarter acre, so that's 16 units per acre.
Right.
And what were you proposing on the apartments?
About 16 acres and it's 300 apartments, so there's.
That's right.
So 16.
By that definition.
Right. So, I mean,
But
I
I don't think
density-
it's a secret.
I've seen up to 50
Importance.
units. I've seen high density up to 50 units an acre. When you see ocean.
Right,
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's true. I just didn't know where the threshold was. Is that, because usually you base it on units per acre.
Deltona's used to be 4 units per lot or more,
Would be high density?
was high density.
High density.
And those were all the ones we had to go and inspect. But if it was a quad house, we had to go and inspect it.
Okay.
But may I ask
16
Heather a question?
Yeah.
If it were townhomes, would you be more amenable to it than the multifamily?
Yes.
And why is that? Just curious, I'm curious. My
Because
dread-
they're owners, so they're more invested in what we have here. I mean, I'd say that like it's a negative thing to apartments, but, I've lived in apartments, I'm still close to that point in my life, and so I understand the need for that. But thinking about moving forward in the future, what we have here, and protecting it, we always talk about the history that we have here and protecting that history, and I think that people who own are more rooted in that and wanting to cherish those memories more than somebody who's just coming in for a season in their life. So townhomes, while they could be homesteaded, and I understand that piece of it, they may pull in the commercial side that we're so desperately needing. So yes, townhomes, I think are more desirable.
Don't be serious.
Yeah, he's serious, Cookie. We have asked for non-commissioned
This
members.
is like our dais.
Yeah, sorry. We've asked in the past, that's what.
We're still looking at Jeff and Scott.
I agree with that.
Thank you, Cookie, I appreciate it. I'll explain
I understand that too.
I mean, we certainly want to get the most bang for our buck as well. You can understand that, but,
Yeah, and I agree, except it just, I think it doesn't, where it's at, I think it moves with here.
The
A quick question. You talked about the beginning where you wanted to sell the property, basically. It's become an albatross, I guess, and you want to break even or whatever it is.
Oh, 7 years.
Oh, I know. I'm not complaining, I understand that. When you talked about you're under contract to sell to the apartment gentleman,
Correct.
would you sell all 33 acres to him?
No, just, what is it, 16? 16.
Just the 16 acres?
It's
So-
not quite half the property.
Okay, so then the remaining portion you would be developing and continue to develop?
As commercial.
As commercial. I guess that's question number one, let me for two. You had in the latest site plan that I saw, you had a hotel and a nail.
Yeah, there were possibilities.
Yeah, any interest in those?
Yes. I've had discussions with several people in the hotel industry, but they're not willing to do anything until something else happens to open up because they're not willing to pay for the roads, that's the bottom
Oh,
line.
yeah, they don't get rid of it.
No, they don't pay for it. And ALF especially doesn't pay for it.
Yeah.
And I think we want a good flag to go there too. I mean, oh, it's just what they call, like a Hilton, you know, there's different, they call flags, is what they.
You know,
The brand is a brand, Hilton, Fairfield, or whatever they want, so.
We had a Radisson inquiry.
Right, yeah, so-
And the thumb, if you want to call it that, there too. Because they like being right in the four, because they
Right.
don't spend money in advertising, because they're building a manor, you know, so. But again, to Lee's point, they're tight. I mean, they throw nickels around like manhole covers. But I get it, that's not an easy business.
So, we've got, kind of wait for
Yeah,
them to come
they're
back.
almost back.
Yeah, we're still very on the, you know, we're all kind of on the fence here. Well, three of us.
Charlie, you
I
prefer
think
the
I
townhouse,
think that
Yes.
we need to have staff
Most
not
of
work
the same-
together,
Yeah.
come up with a proposal,
Yeah.
to see what it would look like.
Well,
So
Rob's
it's more
problem,
than just verbiage.
You
Yeah.
tend to take care of what they own, and what they do.
You know, I guess what,
well, that's true to a point, but also, when you have one central owner, they can maintain the entire complex to a certain standard.
They can.
It becomes,
Will they?
that's a very
They
valid
don't
question.
have to, they can command the rent.
They are nice, these new are nice.
Oh, yeah.
the,
Very different.
one way I guess I thought of asking it is, would each commissioner, mayor, and commissioners support a level of residential over there? And if yes, what would be the conditions of allowing residential over there? And you can say, no, I don't want residential, period. There's no set of circumstances that could come about that I would want residential there, and that's fine. And I think, you know, Mr. Hurley wants to know that as well, that if there's support for residential, then the question is, okay, what would it take to get your support for that? If you're willing to contemplate residential over there, what are the conditions by which you would contemplate it? Is it switching apartments to townhouses? Is it cutting the density in half? Is it, whatever it is? I think that's, if I was in Mr. Hurley's shoes, and apparently residential is a thing that's hot now, he needs to sell something to get the rest moving. What's it gonna take what type of residential would be supported there? And if it's no residential, that's fine too.
So that's basically for, if we had, using this picture, if we had a residential back away from, from Orange Camp, is that residential there acceptable in any way, shape, or form? You said no. Rick said yes.
May I interrupt? When you say residential, are you talking about
I'm talking about where people,
multifamily, or are you talking
I'm talking
about?
about where people.
Residential.
The most basic definition of
Very
residential.
broadest one known.
I'm broadening up as much as I can, whether it's townhomes, whether it's apartments, whether it's
Single family, whatever.
one really big house. Are we, obviously that's not, it's high density, so that really isn't the question, but you were more interested in maybe townhomes where people were owners and had that ownership buy-in, literally, to make the,
If it's the
More
only way
anchored.
we can make this developed. If we can still market it as commercial, that would be more desirable for me.
as pure commercial, but
Right, as purely commercial, but, I mean, I think we all want to work into, come together and make it work. So, I'm open to considering any of it, but apartments are very unattractive. So I think for me, the residential piece of it would be townhomes or cutting it in half, which I think you said, Lawson, that it wouldn't benefit under 275.
Yeah, you start, the cost to do the whole development, and you start.
So that doesn't seem reasonable to say.
Yeah, and somewhere around that number, I don't wanna speak for the developer.
Right.
But somewhere in that, all of a sudden, just, is pure
Well,
numbers,
we
right?
see just, in our absolute ignorance as we drive around the world, we see these fairly substantial apartment complexes drop in, just like from the skies. And boom,
Yeah.
look there, that's there now, dang, there's a cow pasture last week. That's what it feels like. And they're usually, in that area, so yeah, they're not putting them in for less, you don't see one small building of those anywhere.
So, just a question on the apartment side, is there a look, I'm just trying to understand, if it was more attractive looking, does that change, or is it the?
No, we would certainly want it to fit, the Lake Helen feel.
Right, yeah.
It's not about that. In my mind, it's about having people who are invested in preserving what we have, because we have a unique community here. And someone's going to be more invested if they own than if they're in that season of life that is taking them from one place to another and quickly. So it's not about necessarily the look of the apartments over the ownership portion, in my mind.
How about you, Roger? I know what you just said about getting something more detailed in front of us, but just that one question as to whether or not with 16 acres of this going toward residential, if we could even divide it out that way. I don't know if we could say 16 acres at residential and really make any of this happen. But
Definitely,
that is
we
a
would put it
way
as-
we could do this.
we would try to do it the best we can, just, we may have to create a new future land use designation for this 16 acres and keep the commercial part as EC, but,
Just something like that.
what I'm looking for is just a goal the commission has,
Mhm.
and then me and the rest of the staff will try to get together how to figure out to make sure that goal can be attained.
So would something like that work in your mind? If a high-density residential could be an anchor that was kind of, not sequestered, but
On that I-4.
was.
I know what you're trying to say.
Was hemmed in, corralled in to a really nice water.
stole.
Yeah. I'm a developer, and these words don't come freely. I'm like it doesn't matter what I'm like. If we were to keep this contained in a relatively small area of 16 acres out of all of this, 50 some odd acres or whatever it is between Lake Helen and the land.
33, I think, in Lake Helen.
33 in the Lake Helen part, so about half of this, the half not right on Orange Camp. Does that work in your mind? Just generally speaking like that?
Yeah, that would work about 40%. I think is what it ends up being, something like that, about a third of it.
How does that work in your mind?
That would be about a little over a third.
How does that work in your mind with apartments? I know you prefer the townhouse, but that question's kind of been answered. What about this question? This is not a vote, this is a question.
Mine is just
Yeah,
residential,
I
it
just
could
don't
be
think I can get
townhomes
mine
or it could be
apartments.
apartments.
Right.
I just don't think I can get, if there's apartments,
I won't go for
That's
condos
very
because that's another HOA we have to deal with.
What's that?
They got HOAs in townhomes.
You don't have each other council.
I dealt with it. Alright, you live in one, I get notices from them all the time.
So you would still be inclined to vote no with, if apartments were part of it. That's interesting that was your tipping point, but I didn't quite pick up on that, before.
Charlene's did. She said the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't know the second.
Yeah.
Charlene, is your,
there was the words we could.
Charlene, is your
Together.
views different if it's townhomes
Yes, you just said.
Yeah,
Okay.
Is that possible?
Well, that's not the bird in the hand, usually,
Well, it kind of was before, but is that?
well, I had the.
That was only a small
But it was all residential at that point, which was not palatable. I mean, residential being the combination of.
So the townhomes were kind of contingent upon the
Well,
apartments?
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
because the apartments are providing that infrastructure to get to the townhomes.
They're the anchor, yeah.
Is a townhome development
So,
feasible at 16 acres?
I think they want more than that.
Because the benefit of the apartments is you go up. Townhomes don't go up, they're just one story typically.
and you sure can't put 30 townhomes on 16 acres, or 300 probably.
I've seen 2 and 3 story townhomes.
Yeah, two stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, the town.
What is that?
yeah.
No, they're side by side, they're just two
Side by side.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm just saying you can't, it's still one unit.
Right, yeah. Right, yeah.
They need multiple.
Pennsylvania has a
So
lot.
there was an upstairs townhome and a downstairs townhome.
Yeah, I was thinking of multiple, increasing the
No,
units.
I've seen them in Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, and that they have, and all the other places in Pennsylvania, they got 3 stories tall, some of them 4 stories tall. That's
California has a lot of them.
One
too.
house.
Right, yeah, they're narrow,
Need an elevator.
they have 4-story apartments now with elevators, I can't believe it. Just.
Well, that's about what the human body can do. That's why so many of the, you go to Paris, everything's about 3 to 4 stories.
Right, yeah.
That's why. It's just what humans can do.
Well, I think the comp plan thing, if I'm not mistaken, didn't necessarily differentiate between.
No, it really came down to.
Or single family or townhome or anything else, so it would seem that to at least get the ball further down the field, we still have to get to a point of whether or not any residential is
Well,
acceptable.
and that's my concern. Was that residential simply a number, and that could be filled in with whatever type of residential? If we had,
I have to go back and
at
look
the point, we
at
had
it.
452.
I think we're gonna, based on the conversation here, we're obviously gonna have to change the number. I don't know if it was, I don't think it distinguished between the type per se.
Or the footprint.
Just a quarter.
Or the footprint, but I think what we would have to do, if we're wanting to focus that in a particular area of the EC, I don't know how we do that, because you gotta remember, the EC is also on that triangular piece going there too. So it's almost like you might have to create a new land use.
I'm sorry, what is it down
Okay, maybe we call it ECR, an employment center residential, or something. We create a little area for that.
Well, what if we eliminated the current PUD or modified the current PUD, made the PUD smaller for the residential section, and then open up the rest of it to the same commercial, either what D-Line has or what the employment center allows?
We can't, we have to amend the PUD, that's just zoning, and so we can't add any residential at all into that PUD unless we amend our comp plan to allow residential in the EC or come up with a new use. And that was the amendment.
So the idea initially was to add X number of residents within the comp plan.
In the EC.
And that would all be used up in this one plan. So that we really ultimately weren't changing the entire comp plan, we were just.
We were
just
adding.
letting one group sneak in under the wire, and that's the one. Is that the wrong way to say that?
Yeah. No, it's sneaky. But you're right, what we were doing is saying, you're allowed this many residential units, and as opposed to typically what you see is residential so many units per acre. Well, that was straight up. This is, you're allowed this many units, the thought was that many units would be utilized by this amendment, but that was also this entire site being used for residential. We're talking about less than the entire site, so we need to lessen the amount of residential units that can be allowed, but somehow we also have to focus that on just this particular 16 or how many other acres it is in that area, and keep the regular EC with non-residential along the Orange Camp area.
Yeah, the rest of the EC would be unchanged.
Correct. And then we'd have to redo a new PUD, whether we would do one or two, I don't know. But if we did one PUD, the residential area would show the residential area, and then the commercial area, which we didn't change, that would show commercial development. What I'm thinking is we just expand the uses broadly, create a development envelope, and kind of leave the area blank, so when they can come in through site planning and come up with a design.
One thing that we always do is allow public comment. I know there's some public comment, but, so I do want to open the floor to that. If you would just state your name. Cookie, I'll call on you first because your hand went up first.
Alan Cook, no, excuse me.
I'll go charge in that.
I live up the street. But anyway, my whole question with this thing is, I always thought the hotel was gonna be the land. You know, that's how it all started, way back a while ago and stuff. Now you're talking about, he's talking about now, maybe us getting a hotel, is that true?
Yes, we've had interest in, you know, this thumb park, which is what we affectionately call it right up here. We've had interest from a hotel.
All right, my question is, there's a couple of things. Some of the people from Victoria and stuff were worried about when Bob, or when the land was gonna put the hotel up, was going up, remember originally, down on the back, up on the road.
Yeah.
That and the restaurant. Well, there was resistance there, but you can't blame them. You're gonna put a 4-story hotel right back there. They're gonna be looking down on those people's backyards. But my question is, wouldn't we'd be better off taking a hotel and moving it down by I-4? Because all your hotels are right by Route 4. Now that was my big question on this. If we're gonna do the hotel as Lake Helen, is it possible we get that down by I-4? That's my question.
Well, right now, we're mostly talking about the anchor and hoping that the hotel and others might come in. But so the hotel is, there has been some interest, but it's really not, it's not a bird in the hand yet.
No, it's dependent on, they expect incentives and all sorts of things, which I don't think it's Lake Helen. I'm not speaking for Lake Helen, but I don't think Lake Helen wants to be paying a hotel to show up.
But you know what, you understand what I'm saying, in other words.
The reason that this particular piece here is because hotels have to spend a lot of money to advertise, but if the hotel itself is an advertising billboard unto itself,
Oh, yes.
they like that. They like visibility from the highway.
Yeah, that visibility is worth $1,000 a month just by itself.
Right. They don't want to be right next to a bridge here where nobody can see them. You know, they'd rather be up here than.
But I'm just saying, if we're gonna do planning and we're gonna change something, I think that should be part of the change. You know what I'm saying?
You mean the entitlement?
Yeah, to be able, in other words, okay, if the hotel can get in there,
I think
we
that's
should have an area to
entitlement
put them
already.
in.
Isn't that an entitlement already, an EC, a hotel? Surely it is.
Oh, probably an EC would be.
Yeah.
You know, but it's not in our, it would probably be in the area that we don't designate residential, for whatever residential use. The EC will have an expanded, that area in the zoning, the PUD will have expanded permitted uses, which we can easily advertise.
Same thing with the restaurant. Would the restaurant go with their, in the area of the hotel? That's all I got.
Yes.
Yeah, the restaurants will probably be along, assuming the multi-family anchor were to go here.
Yes.
The restaurants, another interest that we've had is childcare. Of course, that goes hand in hand.
I'm just saying we should make some plans to do that, even if we don't have them right now. Because if you take that advantage away from hotels or a restaurant, then you're never gonna get them in there, because they ain't gonna be interested.
I think a restaurant is out of the EC, is it not?
You know what I mean?
What's that?
Isn't restaurants and things like that allowed in the EC? No.
I would think so. I would think that, but I'm pretty sure.
I'm just saying we should check on it,
Yeah.
make sure.
All we can do, Cookie, at this particular point in time is say the use is allowed. Now, whether or not the infrastructure is in place to support it, a restaurant, I would think so. A hotel, I don't know that the infrastructure is there to support a hotel in front of
sewer and all
Okay,
those
you see-
things, right? You gotta look at sewer capacities and all the impacts.
Right.
But I'm just saying we should look and think about it, that's all.
My name is Lynn Keane. I'm a fairly new resident here, having purchased a home in the woods of Lake Helen about 2 years ago. And I've heard rumors about the, development of that land. I heard about this meeting today. And I just thought I'd come and see if I could figure out what was going on. It didn't help much.
Welcome to the social.
It's very confusing. You guys got a lot of work to do, that's all I can say.
Well, we're doing it, yeah, it's, every meeting we have like this, I learn something and hopefully everybody.
Obviously, I'm worried about traffic and congestion and quality of living and infrastructure. I mean, what are you gonna do for water and power and yada, yada, yada? You got a ways to go.
We do. Move on down the line.
Here at Heath and my wife Sharon Heath, we've lived here almost 50 years and we're for it. Because so many times we sit in these meetings and we hear back and forth discussions of how we're gonna pay for this, how we're gonna pay for that. We don't have enough money for this, we don't have enough money for that. And we know the bottom line in that situation, it falls right back on us taxpayers. And there's gotta be a limit to where, this is gonna have to stop.
The whole not in my backyard, eventually, you don't have anything in your backyard ever.
Well, we still gotta have some
You
more
know,
spending.
and when we got thousands of homes built and around us, we're gonna have traffic. There ain't a place you go nowadays that don't have traffic.
Betcha.
You know.
In line, wherever you go.
So,
Yeah.
I think this is an opportunity to help alleviate some of the financial burden that we face in Lake Helen.
Appreciate it, Sharon, do you want to weigh in?
I sure do.
Yeah, go.
Ditto to what Cookie said, ditto to what my husband said. Sharon Heath, Cook Street, with Helen. People complain because of traffic. The poor old I-behind gets complained about all the time. It's not all I-behind. We all know it's people coming through, cutting through, Deltona, New Smyrna, Delane. It's not always I-behind. I don't have any input on I-behind. I don't have any kids or grandkids at I-behind. Volusia Pine, same thing. Everybody is gonna have a pick of what they're gonna gripe about. It's I-behind this time. Wherever you go, you're gonna wait in line. People apologize because they're taking too much time and everybody's waiting in line. I expect to get the same treatment for waiting in that line, just like you did. At a doctor's office, at a bank, wherever you're gonna wait in line. Whether it's in the traffic line, whether it's in a grocery line. You get in the shortest line at the grocery store, you're gonna be the last one out. Bottom line. Apartments, I don't know, I think there are apartments in Orange City at the Dollar Tree where they built that. It's apartments, right?
Yes.
And it is landscape, it's clean, I haven't seen any trash
Hold
there.
that thought. You want to see an ideal setup where you got residential and commercial all together. Go to Hilton Head, South Carolina, at their shopping center there.
It's all right there.
It's all right there. It's all right there. You got everything you need, one stop. And the apartments, they're what, 4-story?
3 or 4.
I don't know if they're apartments or whatever, but there's 3 or 4 stories, but it's great.
It's all right there.
And
We
it's
went
all
there
right
on
there.
anniversary, and as soon as we drove off the main road, it was like, this is Hurley's property.
What we should have done is took pictures and presented them to you.
But you have
It's
a,
hard to capture stuff like that.
Yeah.
You can't get in Polaroid, though. I
Yeah.
know what you're
you
saying.
have a Kroger grocery store, you have a bank, you have the little mom and pops, you have the clothing store, you have the apartments, you have the restaurants. It's all right there on the main road. And as soon as we drove in, it was just like we both looked at each other and said,
This is what
this is
we
Hurley's property.
Sounds good to me.
You may not know you owned it, but we envisioned all of that Hurley property. But something's gotta give, whether it's apartments, whether it's homes, whether it's townhomes, something's gotta give. I mean, we're being surrounded by every other entity, every other community. We're taking the heat from all of that. Let's start getting some revenue from all of that.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Kelly, did you want to?
Yeah, no, I'm not. Kelly, 616 John Street here in Lake Helen. Mentioned not in my backyard. Guess what? It's not in your backyard. It's right across the bridge. It's already an area that we can't, right now that we couldn't access the employment center. It's property that we did not have any say for because it was annexed into Lake Helen. And rather than the Automall that everyone had really big problems with at the beginning, now we're looking at what we need. Shops, possible shops, hotels. We always keep hearing about we need more people are looking for housing. I'm for the apartments, mainly because it's important not only for our youth to be able to get up a start and the mobile generation coming through, but we have a large population of elderly who are selling their homes. The idea of moving into another home with the villa is wonderful if you still want to maintain things around your house. But having the option to pay rent, you're not owning anything. Therefore, if you do end up going to nursing home or hospice, you don't have to lose any of your money on that sale because it's already done. But the elderly can also utilize the amenities, the pool, the gym, the business center, all those things that are inside of an apartment. But the biggest thing, and please, if I'm incorrect, apartments fall underneath commercial taxing. So you're going to receive more tax than you would on ownership with less townhomes. And the maintenance for, in talking about the maintenance of you own your property, have more pride. Absolutely, I get that. But the apartment developer, whoever that is, they have to live up to a certain standard. They have to, and if they don't, Lake Helen has the ability to go in and say, hey, this doesn't look right. This is against this code violation. So those things can be done, but we're still looking at a higher tax base. We need something to start this off. We need to work on our infrastructure on this side of the bridge, or we're going to lose what we have. Right now, we're looking at all these, possibilities for loans, and that's a lot of money out of our taxes. So, am I right about the commercial tax for apartments compared to?
Yes.
Okay. So for me, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah. There's no homestead on apartments.
Yeah, and there's only one unit as an owner.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
I would assume the based on revenue, rental revenue, that's how they come up with the value for tax purposes, where single families, I include townhouses, individually owned, would be based on comparable sales.
Yeah, so the rough number is the revenue is 28% higher per square foot.
I'm sorry, say that again, the rough revenue meaning
28
to the city?
28%.
Or to the owner?
No, to the city.
To the city, okay, just making sure that's what I thought you were saying, but I'm not sure. Okay, that's interesting, 28%.
Well, for sure, with an apartment, you can, you take a smaller footprint of land. In an apartment, you can start going up, and you can start having multiple floors, so you get more units in there, whereas when you do single-family ownership, if it's not a condo, it's townhouses, and they may be multiple levels, but I don't know if I've ever seen a townhouse with, 2 stories, it's one level, and a staircase going up to another one, it's another 2 stories on top of that. I've never seen that.
I'm pretty sure a townhome actually owns the land.
Yeah.
That's one of the only distinctions that somebody explained to me one
bricks and mortar.
Common walls that are.
Condos, you own within 6 inches on each side, and then everything else is commonly owned. So and then there's reserves like everything, you know, for streets and townhomes, there's all sorts of.
Yeah, you still, even with the townhomes, and you individually own the land, you know, grass and everything, you can have an HOA, but townhomes that doesn't
Yeah.
maintenance.
You're right.
But Kelly made a good point too, if I may add, because once again, you're talking about the anchor concept or magnet or whatever you want to call it. But the things that it brings along are a benefit to the folks who live in the real locality too, because it would be nice to have these restaurants and gas station and other amenities. I know that the people that I've talked to, and again, you know, when I talk to people, is it real or is it memorex? It isn't real until they sign a contract. But there's a lot of enthusiasm for these new rehab centers now. And I talked to Mark Holman, who you know, about putting him and stuff on the wall, wanted to do a physiotherapy, physical terrorist, or whatever you call them, those people that hurt you. They require a fairly decent sized footprint. And of course they require, you know, accessibility for people in wheelchairs and all of that. And usually they put in some sort of an aquatic element to do things with too. So that type of use would be ideal in a location like this. So to Kelly's point, the magnet that this provides to pull in these other commercial things are an attractive element and an amenity to everybody in that town, and not just the people who live on the campus.
Yeah, and the trend towards shrinking is also hitting the apartments. Just like in the homes now, they're moving, a lot of people are wanting the tiny homes, which are, you know,
Like those
800 square foot, 900 square foot.
700 feet.
And then, but the apartments are shrinking also. The report was the newest ones built in Seattle were 700 square feet each. And in Miami, theirs averaged out to 1,100 square feet.
Seattle's even smaller, and so is downtown's put in.
They built it to 400 feet.
400 feet for the first unit. So they're doing 3 floors. And the new ones now, they have.
It's a single car garage.
Well, some of them have a no, they each have their own bathroom, but they have shared, laundry rooms and, kitchen.
Yeah, it's
And,
all those dorms.
yeah, very similar.
It's a hostel.
So there's 2 to 3 that, yeah, so anyway.
I just got one question about the apartments, and it's, you hear about it, everything else. Is it true that when you go over 3 stories, you have to have an elevator?
Used to be that way, but I believe now.
Yeah,
I've heard that.
I've heard people doing 4-story, they're not gonna do 4-story here. I think that these are gonna be a garden style, 3-story, and that's gonna be that type product, so.
But you know what I mean? It
Yes,
says
sir.
500.
I'm not sure about the elevators.
They're building one in Daytona quickly, and the top floor is split, but it's really, even though the building is 4-story, it's really only 3 floors. So the top floor has a sort of a loft area. So it looks like it's a 4-story building, but it's really.
I understand where you're going. That last story is part of the 3rd story.
That's on,
All right, I just was curious.
I know, we're gonna finish up, I thank you for your time, I just want to kind of close, for at least from my side, I know it's challenging being in your position, and, you have a unique, like Helen's, again, 4th generation here, I understand, everyone wanted to protect, I lived in the land for a while, but born and raised in Colorado Park, Orlando, and it is challenging, as growth happens and heads your way, and I know you have tough shoes here trying to fill of, you know, helping your community out from a tax standpoint, protecting this uniqueness. I do believe that this property does kind of offer a chance to, just because it's not in the core, and I understand, and I'm gonna say that this core is unique, and I think I-4 separates that, I do, and I think by having it over there, it doesn't impact maybe some of the things that you don't want to change about this side of the community. I don't want to take away from that other side of I-4, but I do think that you have a chance here to really protect everything that you guys, I think, feel like you want to protect in the uniqueness of Lake Helen, but end up with some revenue that will benefit everybody in your community. So that's kind of my question.
I think, just from what I perceive, I can comfortably say that the Automall would not have been approved on this side of it. They do view it that way. The difference is, we had this Automall being proposed, and now that's changed.
Right.
And getting this commission and the community to accept this change is, I think, a bigger pill than you think it is to accept.
Yeah.
And so, and I guess historically, this has always been sold as the, going to be the economic savior, along with that triangular piece going towards Daytona, for Lake Helen. So when the Automall came in, we got this additional land, all of a sudden there's going to be this huge project there. It's buffered by I-4. It was going to save all the financial woes of the city. It was, ideal. And it didn't come to fruition, or we understand why, things like that happen. But just changing the mindset of going from that to residential stuff.
Yeah. And you see it again, that was the same conversation that you see up and down the corridor, right? I mean, these changes even are continuing to change, right? And the toughest one, I always say, is going from agriculture to commercial. I mean, that's, when you go in a community that's seen this ag of these cows out there, and you can still, you go off by Disney where there's still cows, right?
That wasn't so hard for us because of I-4. It was right. That side of I-4.
But y'all know what I'm saying, is this, going from ag to some type of commercial, everyone's in shock. To me, this.
I moved from an area in Cincinnati where I lived in my grandparents' pasture.
Yeah.
They had a big, I don't know how many hundreds of acres it was, pasture area that they sold to a developer. And it basically was developed similar to Deltona. It had commercial hubs located in different spots, and all the rest of it was residential.
Yeah.
And luckily my backyard went to a park, to a stream that now was the city's sewer, because that's where we used to swim in. So, moving down here and seeing the open country has made a big difference.
Well, we certainly learned a lot about this, which was the purpose of this meeting, definitely. Another purpose is to get closer to a decision than to an answer, I guess might be a better word. Roger suggested putting together something. Scott, do you see anything we could put together and bring before the commission that would really change anything? Have you heard anything that?
I mean, there are some things, if you want my opinion, personal opinion, based on what I've heard,
As far as what we've looked at, changing this.
We could change it. I think realistically, I think Hurley and his team to go back and say, is a 16-acre townhouse development going to be the sufficient of an economic stimulus, anchor, magnet, whatever, to do this?
Well, I don't think the townhouse is an option. I think it would be apartment.
Well,
The townhouses won't have it without the apartments, and of course, I took the townhouses out of the equation because I knew it wasn't.
Yeah, Heather was referring to townhouses, but it wasn't.
Right. So, then I think if we don't have, I could be wrong, if we have apartments, I think there's at least 2 no votes. Basically, no one's voting, but just the perception. So, if there's, I think Rick would probably be a yes vote for apartments. If the both of you say, yeah, let's move forward with the concept of thinking about apartments, yeah, we could bring back something.
I think anything that changes that restrictions is beneficial.
Okay. Actually, there's a conversation you and I had after the meeting where you said that. That's what I said. Well, that's why I said let's eliminate all the restrictions in the PUD But it was gonna just be exclusively commercial, because we have to get a change of comp plan to allow residential.
Right.
Yeah.
But step by step.
Does that, it seems to me that one way or the other, whether it ultimately is, it ultimately would require a change to the comp plan, which that would be the focus you're talking about.
Yeah. There's actually two votes, you know.
Just like there was last
Yeah, exactly. And so you really wouldn't be reconsidering the old one, because that's not gonna come back for you.
No, that method happened, and that was.
That's a procedural.
That was a procedural thing, I think, yeah. We don't need to bog down to those weeds again.
Would that happen at a special meeting? Is that, would that be possible?
These days, possible.
In the near future, because I have a contract, unfortunately, that expires.
Are these ones just March 31st, I guess, or something? Is it no point or?
That's going to be pretty tight.
That's gonna be possible.
Yeah, that's going to be pretty tight.
Well, I think I could approach Stephen and that he's been bouncing the ball for 2.5 years. I don't
You
think.
might get an extension if you had a realistic
Yeah, we
possibility.
can work on it, work on it, and then it's just variation of what was submitted to you that, but I think we're gonna have to, do you have a legal description for the area that you're talking about, for the apartments?
I have a legal description for the entirety of the Lake Helen portion that probably could be retweaked, but then, the way, the conversations that we've had about the attractiveness of commercial, we have to, in my opinion at least, we have to scooch the apartments up to the north so that there's commercial along Orange Camp Road. That's where commercial ends.
You know, and I can talk to Rob about it, I'm just thinking the only way to
Yeah.
make sure the commercial goes in one area and the rest, and the apartments go in another area, is we're gonna have to create two land uses.
It's more complicated, isn't it?
It's not more, no,
Well,
it's
it's
complicated,
an
more.
additional
Yeah,
complication.
yeah. We have to have a description of the area somehow of where this area is gonna be, we're going to allow the apartments.
Well, I still find myself in a position of basically being the swing vote here, which I really don't want to be, but it's just the nature of the beast. I think we've heard all we can hear right now. We do have two more items that I want to approach the commission with. Should only take about another 15 minutes or so, but I don't need to waste all this time.
Okay.